Hey guys, what's up? I hope you had a happy holiday season and a happy start to the new year. Welcome back to the Emanuel-C channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Last Week in Tech, the show giving you weekly tech updates based off my podcast with a friend. Our most recent podcast focused on an end-of-year wrap-up / predictions for 2022. So today I'll be talking about our predictions from this time last year, my favorite tech products from this past year, my favorite tech stories from 2021, and predictions for 2022. If you're new here to the Emanuel-C channel, welcome. I hope you like it here. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the notification bell so you can keep up with all the uploads here on the channel. We're going to start today with our predictions from last year. On the podcast, we talked about Tesla quality control issues and thought they might focus on shipping more finished products. But if you remember from a more recent episode, they recently have been shipping cars missing USB-C charging ports, as well as missing wireless charging mats. No way to charge your phone. Also, we were very impressed with the Apple M1 chip. We were looking forward to the future of Apple silicone. We said on devices with M1, there weren't enough ports. We were hoping for more. There was also speculation on the naming between M2 or MX. It was actually more Apple than that, going with Pro and Max monikers. I wonder if an M1 Mini is coming out next. We even joked they could put an M1 chip in the iPad Pro. Well, Apple must have listened to our podcast because they ended up doing just that. We were also looking forward to shows from Disney+. The second season of The Mandalorian had just finished, and all the Marvel shows had yet to come out. There were also new Star Wars shows in the works, like the Book of Boba Fett. Have you started watching the series yet? What are your thoughts? Well, the M1 Pro and M1 Max chips came out later on in the year, in brand new redesigned MacBook Pros. Thankfully, they had more ports and were more powerful. However, they didn't seem as revolutionary as when the M1 first came out. These updates are exactly what Apple users have been asking for since 2012, when they began shrinking their Pro devices and removing ports. They were releasing professional devices with only 2 ports. Everyone had to get used to the dongle life. But we finally got more ports and more power. M1 was a game changer. M1 Pro and M1 Max, not as big of a game changer. But it's hard to radically change the game 2 years in a row. I'll rant a bit more about the new MacBook Pros in the next segment. Next up on the episode, we'll be talking about my favorite tech from this past year. I decided to split it up into 3 segments: favorite phone, favorite laptop / computing device, and favorite other. Do you have any predictions what my favorites might be? My favorite phone of last year was the Google Pixel 6. I've always liked Google and the stock Android experience. In terms of value for what you get, this one is one of the best, if not the best phone of 2021. When Google first rebranded to Pixel, it was essentially another Nexus phone. With the Nexus series, they had other manufacturers design and build the phone, and they would put stock Android as the operating system. At the start of the Pixel series, Google took over the design and manufacturing, but still using Snapdragon chips with stock Android. With the start of the Tensor SoC, this is the first all Google phone. My favorite laptop / computing device was the Framework laptop. There was a lot of buzz before it launched, and lots of buzz after it launched. The company seems to be doing well, opening up pre-orders to Europe and finally making its way to areas outside of North America. If you don't know about Framework, you can watch one of my previous videos here. It is a laptop built on modularity. Every part is easily replaceable by the user and easily sourced on their website. The Framework laptop also features swappable ports through their expansion card system, so you can have a laptop tailored around what ports you actually need to use. It also has a community with users custom designing their own ports. Even Linus from Linus Tech Tips partnered / invested with the company.
I was so impressed during my initial impressions that on top of ordering one on the spot, I publicly offered to invest in the company. Surprise! They called my bluff, offering me a chance to put up or shut up. And I never shut up.
Not to mention that Fairphone 4 came out this past year, another modular, easily repairable device. There's a trend of repairability that is starting to gain some momentum. This past year, there's been a lot of progress with the right to repair movement, even getting an executive order from the US president. Even legacy device manufacturers like Microsoft and Apple have begun publicly pledging to do better when it comes to making their devices easier to repair and providing authentic parts for users. My favorite other was the EV/EV truck market. Trucks like the Rivian R1T, Ford F-150 Lightning, and Hummer EV, which debuted in 2020, made media rounds in 2021 and is supposed to come out in 2022. Not to mention the Tesla Model S Plaid came out this year. And yes, I like to talk about Tesla quality control issues, but you can't deny this car shows just how exciting EVs can be. A lot more companies have pushed their vision of an EV future, stating when they'll go all electric. Audi debuted their concept sphere cars. Dodge announced they're going all electric in 2 years now by 2024. The EV market is at a point where it is really accelerating. Now time to rant about the M1 Pro and M1 Max MacBook Pros. A lot of tech journalists, YouTubers, bloggers said these devices were their favorite of the year. My podcast co-host asked me if I thought this was a good pro-grade device. My answer was yes. The M1 Pro and M1 Max MacBook Pros are great professional devices. You have to be a professional that needs this level of power to do your work, to create your content, your media. A YouTuber or someone in more traditional media creation like video graphics, Illustrator, motion capture, computer-generated images, because these are very expensive devices. Full stop. Part of why I feel M1 was so revolutionary, you got great performance. And for the products they put them in, they were charging less compared to their Intel counterparts. The value proposition was ridiculous. It blew everyone away. So when you see it cost less and you're getting way better performance, game changer. M1 Pro and M1 Max have better performance, more ports because professionals need ports, but price is almost double in some cases. It's hard for me to recommend this to anyone unless you are someone who needs this for work. Unless you're someone who has tried M1 and have run into bottlenecks in terms of computing power or graphical processing power, then you need M1 Pro or M1 Max. Even so, it's not guaranteed your workflow will be improved. A lot of legacy programs will be running through Rosetta, an emulator, a very good emulator, but an emulator nonetheless. If you aren't using Final Cut or Logic or other programs that have already been translated for M1 and to use a Metal API, you may not get the full benefit of the extra power. So you would be paying more for these more powerful machines that aren't really giving you all of their power. These devices are for a specific class of professionals with a specific workflow. It has lots of ports, which is great, but we shouldn't have to pay that much more if we want more ports. Aside from that, why spend an extra $1,000 on a device? Just to say you have the newest Apple product? They're great for professionals in the sense you are a professional content media creator with a professional workflow that will be directly enhanced by the M1 Pro or M1 Max. Outside of that, they're not necessary. And so it wasn't the best device of the year for us. Next up on the episode, we'll be talking about my favorite tech stories from 2021, which happen to be NFTs and the metaverse. As mentioned on a previous episode, at the start of the year, there was this story about a game called Axie Infinity and NFTs being sold. At the time, the general public wasn't really sure what an NFT was, and then boom, NBA Top Shot, CryptoPunks, Bored Ape Yacht Club, Crash Test Joyride, NFT land sales everywhere. Facebook also rebranded to Meta, and then every company stated they were building for the metaverse. The terms for NFTs and metaverse weren't newly created in 2021, but this past year they emerged into the spotlight, and for a lot of the year seemed to be all anyone could talk about. And I think we are only at the beginning. Another story, the narrative around repairability. Like I mentioned earlier, the idea of repairable devices has become a more popular topic around more and more people. The average person is paying attention to how repairable their devices can be. Apple has announced they'll release schematics and will help make things easier for third-party repair companies. Microsoft announced they will try and make their products more sustainable going forward. And more companies have even begun releasing their own teardown videos. Another story, custom silicone in general. We talked about the M1 from Apple in 2020. This past year, M1 Pro and M1 Max came out. Google came out with the Tensor SoC. Apple is building their own chips now too. Snapdragon co-built the G3X gaming platform with Razer. Could they be moving into a gaming phone next? Companies are starting to realize they can make their own products better if they tailor-make the SoC for what they want their devices to be good at, what they want to emphasize. Another way to look at why it could be even more important now, we're in a global chip shortage. If everyone is pulling from the same manufacturers, the same pool of chips, the bigger dogs will eat first. Samsung needs Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 for their S22 phones. Sorry Asus, sorry TCL, sorry OnePlus, sorry Google. You'll have to get your chips later than expected. There aren't only the performance benefits of designing a chip to be good at what your company wants to emphasize. If Google is building Tensor for themselves, they have easier access to them and control the quantity better. Obviously, Google isn't building the chips themselves. Apple isn't manufacturing their chips in Cupertino. They're being built overseas. But if you have a foundry dedicated to building your chips for you, you don't have to compete as much with all the device manufacturers out there. I think this is part of why custom silicon has been so big and going into the near future can continue to be big, especially for a company like Apple that likes to have full control of their supply chain. Having that extra control over their chip supply will benefit them even more during the current global chip shortage. And finally, we're going to be talking about predictions for 2022. To start off, Google will build out their ecosystem. Part of why Apple is so successful is because of the ecosystem they've built. From the iPhone to the Apple Watch to MacBooks to iPads to HomePods, the list goes on. Hopefully, Google can build out a similar ecosystem. The Pixel Watch has been rumored forever. Do we get it this year? Now with Tensor, do we get a Tensor-powered Android tablet, a Tensor-powered Chromebook? With how popular they've become over the past 2 years? Google is in a perfect position right now. For years, they've had the OS and phones on lock, and Chromebooks have become very popular. They have their own SoC now. You add a watch to that, and you could get some tighter integration between phone, watch, and Chromebooks. That's a huge way to build their business and grow their market share. Not to mention, they may have an even bigger opportunity than what Apple currently has. Chrome OS can use Android apps. Android can obviously use Android apps. Now Windows 11 can use Android apps as well. So the ability for a crossover between Windows 11, Chrome OS, and Android, and their own watches, and their partnership with Samsung on their watches, they could have a much bigger ecosystem than Apple has if they build it right. It just remains to be seen if they can pull it off and if they even try to this year. Another prediction, Apple updates. As much as we harp about Mac products for being so expensive, there are a lot of product refreshes predicted for the upcoming year. There's supposed to be a new iMac Pro, a new iPad Pro design, an iPhone SE with 5G, new AirPods Pro earbuds, the biggest MacBook Air revamp in the product's history, new Mac Mini, a revamped Mac Pro with Apple Silicon, the iPhone 14 lineup of course, new Apple Watches, and possibly, most significantly, Apple's first mixed AR and VR headset. I'm excited to see it, all of it. Not necessarily going to buy any of their products, but I'm excited to see how Apple can continue to push the envelope in terms of performance and price. The Mac Mini with M1 in it was such a huge value proposition. The new MacBook Pros can be justified. All new redesigned chassis, liquid Retina XDR displays with ProMotion. It has to be portable, which leads to harder manufacturing constraints. I get it. On a Mac Mini, you don't need to charge for a liquid Retina display. No redesigned keyboard, no touchpad. There's a lot you could factor out price-wise. The new iMac Pro will obviously look great. It will obviously perform great too. My biggest question is, do they put an M1 Pro chip in an iPad Pro? Also, do they make some sort of changes to iPads, given the Mac OS or just better multitasking? And that's it for this episode. If you're interested in a more in-depth conversation, click the link down below to check out my podcast with a friend covering this episode's topics. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button down below. It helps out a ton. And leave a comment for any of the stories you were interested in. Let me know what your favorite tech is from 2021 and any bold predictions or hot takes you might have for 2022. Well, thank you so much for watching. I'm Emanuel-C, and I'll catch you in the next video. Until next time, take it easy. Peace.